Boston wrestling sports and the MWF explodes into a new year of unknown with professional wrestling content galore, and we need you to join our family. Every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. after we review the previous night's Monday Night Raw, it's Wrestling Insiders at your house with the unpredictable WWE Hall of Famer, Mr. USA, Tony Atlas. Wednesday nights after WWE NXT and AEW at 10 p.m., you never know who's going to show up on Wrestling Insiders Special Edition. Every Thursday night at 10 p.m. after our NXT and Dynamite review, it's Marty Jannetty's No Holds Barred Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll journey through the 80s and 90s on Wrestling Insiders Party with Marty. Friday nights after the lights go down at the Thunderdome on SmackDown, it's John Cena Sr.'s Wrestling Insiders Fabulous Fridays. Plus, look for classic clips, bonus live episodes, pay-per-view watch-alongs, and more. If you want early, ad-free access to all of our Wrestling Insider talk shows, our acclaimed studio shoot interview DVD library, and to help keep wrestling legends working during the worst of times, for less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, join our growing family at patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. Expect the unexpected in 2021.
This is Mick Foley.
This is Harley Race.
This is Shelton Benjamin.
This is Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
This is the Monster Abyss.
And this is Daniel Bryan.
This is JBL, and you're watching the MWF.
Be there live.
Wrestling fans around the corner, around the world, welcome to another Wrestling Insiders Current Events. I'm Dan Mirade, along with our partner in crime down in southwestern Connecticut, one of the finest places you'll find in all of New England. Referring to Mr. Matt Degnan. Matt, a pleasure to have you with us yet again for another review of some fine professional wrestling television programs.
Oh, it was almost like a couple of pay-per-views last night, how NXT and AEW did their shows. They both had stacked cards that I'm ready to break down with you.
You're ready to break them down. The question is, everyone wants to know, where have you been during the live premieres?
As you say, MIA.
Well, what kind of action have you been missing in?
The action of the Gonzaga Bulldogs playing tonight at 8:30.
So you don't think we'll see you during the premiere of this episode either?
Depends when the Gonzaga game is over.
Depends on when the Gonzaga game is over. Well, fans, it is a Thursday night. You know what that means. We have reviews of NXT and AEW. Then at 10 p.m. at the top of the hour, it's Wrestling Insiders Party with Marty with the always outrageous, outspoken, two-spoken, a man that looks at it with no holds barred, a sex, drugs, and rock and roll life. We're talking about Marty Jannetty, and perhaps the longest episode in the history of the series that chalked in at over 90 minutes. So you have a lot of Marty tonight, especially if you want a party that begins at 10 o'clock. But now we're going to take a look at I don't want to give away too many of my thoughts as of yet, but two wrestling programs from Wednesday night, as always. If you want early ad-free access to all of the great programs in studio shoot interview talk shows, if you want access to the studio shoot interview DVD library with the classics, like with the Iron Sheik, Paul Bearer, Kamala, and more, if you want to help keep those wrestling legends working, all for less than a cup of coffee over at overpriced Starbucks, head on over to patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. I am very proud of you fine folk that have continued to join to help the cause, to help get more great legends in this studio. I just put up a video, probably right before we started taping this, Matt, with some New Year's news for the great Patreons out there about what we have happening behind the scenes. You know what? If anyone deserves these behind-the-scenes scoops, I have to say it is the fine Patreons that, they keep filling the gas tank, so to speak.
For your car?
Well, if I drove, yeah, exactly. They would be, yeah. All right, that's a different story for a different time. Which of the two programs from last night would you like to dissect first?
NXT.
All right, I'm going to have to flip my note. You don't know this, but I am at a new, almost midget-sized podcast table.
You told me about that the other day.
Oh, did Did I?
Yeah, for the Raw one. Remember the audio sounded weird?
Oh, you know what? Well, I'm at the midget-sized podcast table, only it's on the other side of the room now. It used
you
to
told
be...
me about that, too.
Well, the French douchebag, I don't know if I told you this, but the French douchebag was furious that a podcast table was put near him, and he thought coronavirus could infect him. So he moved it in front of the professor's desk, which would be the left side of the room from where I usually sit. But then it got moved up against the wall to the left. So I'm still trying to get used to the lack of notepad paper room that I have. But I pushed the recorder back a little bit, and now I can actually read my note, have the phone, the mic, the recorder, and the water all in the same place at the same time. So life is good.
It's almost like a radio studio.
It's almost like a radio studio. You're right. I just have to get used to something new. That's all. All right, so it was NXT at Daly's Place. It was called New Year's Evil with this bizarre, strange, red-looking baby that was the logo of it, and it was quite a night.
Or the Capitol Wrestling Center.
What did I call it?
Daly's
Well,
Place.
it's been a long day. I just got done with your good friend John Cena Sr. for Fabulous Fridays.
Oh, fabulous as ever with the piece.
And then I said, wait a minute, I still got to talk to Matt. So I had to bring everything back over all 3.5 feet from my desk, and here I am.
Oh, well, we'll get into NXT now. NXT opened up commercial-free with Karrion Kross defeating Damian Priest. This outcome was expected since Kross just came back and Priest is headed to the main roster soon. I thought this was a good opening match to start New Year's Evil. Just kind of shows that they need to have a good opening and a close to a show. One to set the tone and one to end on a good note and leave the people wanting more or satisfied, which they did on NXT last night. Was they opened the show good and they closed the show good. It's almost like a good sandwich. It's like the bun, and then you want the good meat in the middle. But
NXT was like a good sandwich to you last night.
Yes, not like AEW though.
All right.
What did you think of NXT, their opener?
I have to say, I thought it was okay. I wouldn't have actually minded a commercial break in this one. The one thing that popped into my mind before the match started was I think someday you're going to see Karrion Kross get one hell of an introduction at WrestleMania someday. I think they're going to, with whatever magic they work when it comes to the special effects and such, with his character, and Scarlett, I believe is the valet's name, someday at a WrestleMania, I can't tell you the number, but I think they're going to have an introduction and a half for him. As far as the match itself last night goes, like I said, wouldn't have minded a commercial break. I think it was a little lengthy. It was almost a pay-per-view length. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say it was pay-per-view quality. As usual, the Beth Phoenix commentary, it was just so forced. Reading the sound bites off of paper like it was an attempted bowel movement, the way she tries to groan and scream and get aggressive out of absolutely nowhere, and then it's almost like Vic Joseph and Wade Barrett have to talk over to her when something is happening in real time that is an honor piece of paper. You might look at it like this, and it might sound crude, but, she hasn't been live at the building for 10 months. If she doesn't come back to work, maybe it's time to replace her and not have her on.
Or just not even replace her, just get rid of her and just have Barrett. Yeah.
I think for a 2-hour show, 2 people is fine.
Yeah, I don't like 3, I guess, is fine, but more than 3 kind of gets a little overdone. I'll talk a second on AEW right now. Is when they had Chris Jericho on commentary last night and they had 4 guys. That got kind of a little too much. Sometimes you don't even know who's talking in the moment if you have that many people.
Yeah.
And it gets a little confusing, especially when, one guy's trying to get his opinion out and then you have 2 guys trying to talk about the match. It's almost like when we do our pay-per-view watch-alongs, you start talking about whatever. and
it's almost like we forget we're watching the show.
Yeah. And that's how it gets on commentary sometimes when you have too many people on one show. It's just you get too many people at once. You get 2 people talking about this, 2 other people talking about that, and it kind of just goes off the rails.
No, you're not wrong.
and you're just trying to watch a wrestling match, and you have Chris Jericho talking about the Inner Circle, who's not even involved in the match that you're watching, and you're kind of, a little bit whatever. And then you got Beth Phoenix, who's yelling in your ear about whatever, oh, this is insane. This is one of the best matches I've seen. Oh, it's just.
Somebody gets hit with the clothesline, and, it's one of those orgasmic oohs.
And then she usually turns it up for the women's matches, which I really don't care for. But whenever those women come out to have a match, she seems to take the reins on those matches sometimes. And I usually mute her whenever she starts going on. It's funny because they usually give her about 10, 15 seconds of her talking, and then they go back to whatever they're doing.
They go back to what's actually happening as opposed to her soundbite. Yeah.
So I usually mute it during that 20 seconds that they have her just talk, and then they go back to Vic and Wade, and then they go back to her for about 10 seconds. It's kind of like they bounce back and forth, like a podcast style, but in commentary. So I really don't care for her, and I know we talk about her every week, but I don't want to bash her too much. Do you
miss her sparkly vests that she used to wear to the ring?
The only thing I miss is her husband, but that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, hopefully sooner than later that fine gentleman will be back inside the squared circle.
And the next matchup of the night, we saw Santos Escobar defeat Gran Metalik to retain his NXT Cruiserweight Championship. Good match to follow up a good opening to the show. I like the way they built off of each other in terms of pace and quality of the match. First you had a little bit of a slower physical paced match. And then in this one, the pace was a little bit quicker, more of a Lucha Libre style match. So I kind of liked how it built off of it rather than having a quick paced match and then a slower paced match. But the way they did it last night was good. What did you think of the second match of the night between the Lucha Libre stars?
I enjoyed the match. Not a bad match at all. It makes you wonder a little bit why you'd have Metalik go over on The Miz on Raw and then on the Raw Tag Team Champions, The Hurt Business, to lose clean on NXT. But
they're making that good money now. Lucha House Party.
So that's why you have him go and job on NXT. Okay, well, that explains it. All right, now I've figured it out.
They got to, as you said last week, they got to fill that Dusty Rhodes tag team thing. So they got to get all the tag team, like when they put Austin Theory. We'll talk about that later, but Austin Theory and Gargano together, which I don't really care for. And the next part of the show, we finally got the reveal of the segments they have been doing for a few months now, which involved the repackaging of Boa and Xia Li. Xia Li ended up defeating Katrina Cortez in a quick enhancement match. I haven't seen much of this new thing they're doing with Xia Li and Boa. They have this, I don't know what other to call him, than Grandmaster, who sits up on the stage.
Was it a man or a woman?
Well, maybe both. We don't know.
It could be Susan Masley for all we know.
It's 2021, so I guess...
That's right. You can't identify.
Yeah. But, I mean, I need to see more of this to kind of get more of an idea on it. But so far, I'm kind of not on the good side of it. But we'll find out what happens. I mean, I like it. A more serious thing happening in WWE, which they tend to go more on the comedy side sometimes. So it's good that they had a more serious gimmick being introduced. But what did you think about this segment and the match that followed?
I was very happy it was quick. I didn't think much of the one that was in the mask, whose name I totally butchered in the notes. What did you say her name was?
Katrina Cortez.
All right, I had it as Katrina Perez, so I guess I made it halfway there.
One of them.
It was an interesting presentation. I had no idea what I was supposed to be looking at with whatever was on the stage. It reminded me of the early days of Nitro when they dressed up King Curtis Ayakea as part of the Dungeon of Doom, screaming from the stage, although this individual, gender unknown, I don't know what the purpose is yet, but I'm sure we'll get to that point.
The next matchup, Raquel Gonzalez defeated Rhea Ripley in the last woman standing match. I thought it was a physical women's match that was good. It was a good blow-off match to their feud that's been going on for months now. With Ripley losing, she is now expected to move to the main roster soon. Maybe we might see her in the Royal Rumble in just a few weeks, but she looks like she'll be main roster bound soon. But I like this match. You know, usually you don't see a bigger woman like this in wrestling. putting on a physical type matchup like this, but I was a fan of it. What did you think of it?
Well, they got their broken table spots in, 2 of them. So, I mean, it was a really big night for them. Got a kendo stick shot when little Dakota Kai ran in. Now, I thought for the ladies, they tried really hard. I thought it had too many props. I think they try and overdo it sometimes when they try and oversell the women, one man's opinion. But great effort from both, and you can't fault them for that.
The Way then made their... I actually worded this weird. The Way made their way into the Capitol Wrestling Center via a police escort for some reason. The Way had a little celebration or whatever it was. They unveiled this painting or caricature of the 4 of them. I'm not a fan of this faction at all. Way too goofy, and the comedy isn't funny. I've said that about a million times on these shows about professional wrestling, that the comedy today is not funny. Shotzi Blackheart and then Kushida a little later came out to interrupt the segment, and they took out the entire group. This then turned into Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae versus Kushida and Shotzi Blackheart. It was made official by Dexter Loomis, and somehow they already had a graphic of the matchup on the screen about 10 seconds after the encounter happened, which I didn't really find good because I kind of just makes it less of a surprise in terms of the shock factor. To me, this is where the show went downhill for the first time, and it took about 80 minutes for the show to do that, so not too bad. But this segment was really the only one that I didn't like for NXT last night. But then in the match itself, Kushida and Shotzi Blackheart defeated NXT North American Champion Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae. I'm not a fan of mixed tag matches, especially when they're thrown together, but this one was all right. It wasn't too long, so I was glad about that. Only thing I liked was Johnny and Candice in street clothes instead of making it obvious that they were going to wrestle and wearing their ring gear during the previous segment. So at least that was a little surprise that the match would happen, even though I wasn't excited for it. You know, you tend to see on the main roster, like when you said on Tuesday, when Miz and Morrison came out in the opening segment in their ring gear, you kind of knew they were going to wrestle instead of coming out in suit and tie. You know, whenever someone comes out in their ring gear for a talking segment, you go, okay, someone's going to come out and it's going to turn into a match. But I was actually glad that they were in street clothes and they didn't kind of translate over, all right, they're going to wrestle. So at least a little bit of a surprise there. But what did you think about this segment and the match that followed?
I thought the segment itself was horrendous. It almost ruined a great show to me. Then the green-haired girl came out and blasted something, and Austin Theory, who could be a potential WrestleMania main eventer's groin for humor that I don't know who found funny. It was just WWE main roster garbage. I hated everything about it. The tag team match itself wasn't that bad.
Yeah, it was okay, but as I said, I think this was the first time I kind of wanted to change the channel throughout the whole show, but for the most part, through this segment and match, it was a very, very good show, but I'll get into my grade later about what I thought about the entirety of the show. After this, NXT announced that they will be doing an NXT TakeOver event on Valentine's Day night on February the 14th. Then William Regal announced that they will be doing a Women's Dusty Road Classic due to their women's division being so deep. I
don't think there's going to be too many classics in that one.
Yeah, I don't know why they need to do this. I get NXT has a lot of women, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need to do a whole nother tag team tournament when you really don't have any women's tag teams in NXT. This reminds me of when AEW did that women's tournament. I believe it was in the summer or the early fall, and they kind of just threw those tag teams together. And
at least that was just on the internet. They didn't waste TV time with it.
Yeah, that was just on YouTube. But I mean, I have no want or need for this tournament at all. I feel like this is going to be one of the fast forward moments of the shows in the next few months or weeks. What do you think about these two announcements they made about TakeOver and the Women's Classic?
Well, I guess love will be in the air at MWF Studios on Sunday night, February the 14th. I continue to wish that NXT would have their pay-per-views on Saturday nights like AEW. It is a more manly night for pay-per-views as far as I'm concerned. I think AEW gets it right. I think UFC has gotten it right for a long, long time with their big events being on Saturdays instead of Sundays. People aren't as rushed on a Sunday night if they're at a group gathering to try and rush and get home. I hate Sunday night pay-per-views. I wish they were all on Saturday, but they've decided to try and present NXT's bigger events on par with WWE's main roster ones. I don't know why. I don't know what the benefit is. I'd rather see it be Saturday. That is my complaint. As far as the Dusty Rhodes Women's Tag Team Classic goes, there is absolutely nothing about that I want to see or have any interest in, but I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of it coming our way on Wednesday nights.
In the main event of NXT New Year's Evil, Finn Balor defeated Kyle O'Reilly to retain the NXT Championship. Good main event to close the show. It was kind of the same kind of match they had at TakeOver a few months ago, a slow and methodical, technical style wrestling match. But I thought, again, as I said earlier in the show, they started the show off well and they ended the show well. And the middle was also good. There's really only one part of the show that I disliked, but I liked the ending to the show. And even in this match, Kyle O'Reilly, he's believed to be injured. He was being checked out by the trainers during the commercial breaks and after the match, too. So we'll find out what happened with him. But what did you think of the main event and Finn Balor retaining?
I thought it was an excellent pay-per-view quality match. Maybe not as good as the one that was on TakeOver last fall, but you had O'Reilly tap out clean in the middle. The way a great championship match should end. I would love to see yet another rematch. I wouldn't mind seeing something along the lines of maybe 2 out of 3 falls at TakeOver on February the 14th. I tip my cap to both men. I've always been a huge advocate of Finn's, where he competed here in the Millennium Wrestling Federation many moons ago. And, I think Kyle O'Reilly has become my favorite of the 4 Undisputed Era members. So I really enjoyed that match. It's one that I wouldn't mind seeing again, as I just stated.
Not Annie's counterpart, baby.
No.
Okay. We'll get into our grades of NXT now. As I said before, the way nonsense was really the only part I didn't like. Without that, I would have moved my grade up. Good show with good wrestling and good storylines. Nothing was eye-rolling other than that one segment I mentioned. The rest was solid. So last night, I gave NXT a 7 out of 10. And if they didn't do that segment with the way, I would have moved it up to an 8. But with that, I gave it a 7.
We are tied. I gave it a 7 as well. I thought the show built outside of the way bullshit that no one really wanted to see. It just seemed like you were moving a little further up, little further up, little further up, little further up. The way thing really took it down. If they didn't wind up having that tag team match, I think my grade would have been a little lower, but at least something came out of the misery that was that comedy skit. And again, with the main event that good, how can one really complain? I mean, that was I would have liked to have given it a higher grade, but the way segment went on way too long, and I'm sure we'll see way more of it.
Yeah. Do you want to take a break before we go over to Daily Split?
I certainly don't want to talk over you if there are any news and notes.
I added them right in.
All right. I don't want to be accused of anything.
No, not in today's world.
All right. Well, right now we're going to take a brief time out, folks. Head on over to the Patreon. We're waiting for you. Wait until you see who is waiting for you. We'll be back after this brief time out. Boston Wrestling Sports and the MWF explodes into a new year of unknown with professional wrestling content galore, and we need you to join our family. Every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. after we review the previous night's Monday Night Raw, it's Wrestling Insiders at your house with the unpredictable WWE Hall of Famer, Mr. USA, Tony Atlas. Wednesday nights after WWE NXT and AEW at 10 p.m., you never know who's going to show up on Wrestling Insiders Special Edition. Every Thursday night at 10 p.m. after our NXT and Dynamite review, it's Marty Jannetty's No Holds Barred Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll journey through the 80s and 90s on Wrestling Insiders Party with Marty. Friday nights after the lights go down at the Thunderdome on SmackDown, it's John Cena Sr.'s Wrestling Insiders Fabulous Fridays. Plus, look for classic clips, bonus live episodes, pay-per-view watch-alongs, and more. If you want early, ad-free access to all of our Wrestling Insider talk shows, our acclaimed studio shoot interview DVD library, and to help keep wrestling legends working during the worst of times, for less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, join our growing family at patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. Expect the unexpected in 2021. All right, wrestling fans, welcome back to Wrestling Insider's Current Events, where we break down both WWE NXT and AEW Dynamite from January, there have been the 6th.
All right, we'll get into AEW
No,
now.
was it January 6th?
Yeah.
January 6th, 2021. It was a interesting night of professional wrestling all around, but what I don't think I told you yet, Matt, is you actually had a booking offer come in.
From who?
There's a podcast that's interested in having you on called Somebody Is Listening.
Oh, who does that one?
That I don't know. I'll have to forward you the email, but I don't know if you'd like to join the show that apparently somebody's listening to.
Well, we'll find out, I guess. But
maybe Glantz is involved.
Maybe I'll do it then.
All right. Well, we're still awaiting. Again, hopefully Glantz is listening. We've had written communication. I know he was very disturbed by everything that went on down in D.C. yesterday. Glantzville apparently had much tighter security. So all is well there.
No one stormed his capital?
No. Glantzville City Hall was safe.
It was barricaded well.
Yes.
Better security, yeah. So moving to AEW here. Their show was called New Year's Smash, and it opened up from Daly's Place with an 8-man tag team match where AEW tag team champions the Young Bucks and SCU defeated the Acclaimed and TH2. It was an okay tag team match to open the night. It wasn't great, wasn't horrible. It was just one of those multi-man matches that AEW loves to open the show with, where everything's high-flying action, tons of spots, really no thought process to it, kind of just more choreographed wrestling rather than psychology in the ring. So nothing really I was enthralled for. But what did you think of the opening match?
I actually liked it. I think the Acclaim has a ton of potential. I really like them. What made me roll the eyes is SCU with another one of these AEW ridiculous self-imposed stipulations that they'll break up if they never, or the next time they lose a match. It's mind-boggling. It's stupid. It's mind-numbing. I mean, why would they choose to put themselves in that position? Almost like when Cody Rhodes said, "I'll never have an AEW championship match again if I don't win." And so many others we've seen like that over the past year and a quarter or so. It's just, it's stupid. And why present something that's stupid? Why would these two guys say, all right, we're never going to team again if we lose another match? There's no rationale behind it. The booking process certainly wasn't my cup of tea, but as far as the match goes, I enjoyed it. I like the Acclaimed. I think they're going to do things with them as time goes on.
Jon Moxley returned to the next segment and cut a promo. This was his first appearance since losing the AEW title about a month ago. Mox says that he is coming back for the AEW title and for Omega to watch out. We saw Moxley a little later in the night, which we'll get into. What do you think about Mox returning?
I thought it was a really good promo. I continue to say it. AEW has utilized this man better than WWE did as Dean Ambrose, other than the fact that WWE was obviously able to give him a larger platform to work on and become a superstar on. But as far as the material given, I think the Jon Moxley material outshines the Dean Ambrose material.
The next matchup, Wardlow defeated Jake Hager. I like seeing big guy matches, especially in AEW when half of their roster looks like children. Wardlow looked better than Hager in this match. So far, Hager hasn't looked good in AEW, in my opinion. They both fist bumped after the match, so their beef has been squashed for now. I thought the match was going to be a little bit better. I didn't think it was that great, but maybe we'll see more from them in the future as a tag team, which I think would be pretty good for AEW. But what did you think of the matchup between these two big men?
I thought it was about a year too soon. I think it should have been built up into some kind of a featured pay-per-view match. They just did an angle a couple of weeks ago where the Inner Circle was back together again, and they weren't going to break up, and everything was going to be kumbaya. And here it is, January 6th, and you have Wardlow and what's his name here, Jake Hager going back and forth. I didn't like it. You have Jericho as the leader of the Inner Circle. You'd think he would have been at ringside, not on commentary. There was a lot I didn't like about the surroundings of the match, but for the physicality, I thought it was pretty good. And the right guy went over in Wardlow. He's someone that, if I was WWE, I'd be counting the days down to sign to a developmental contract.
Next up on New Year's Smash, we saw a weigh-in between Darby Allin and Brian Cage before their TNT Championship match next week. Sting came out to break up Team Taz, trying to beat up Darby Allin. And yet again, Team Taz runs away from a 170-pound guy and a 61-year-old guy. I don't get why they have Team Taz look weak and run away from these two every single week. It looks stupid to me. When it's 5-on-2 against a tiny guy and an older guy, it really makes no sense to me when you have the numbers, size, and age advantage. So I don't know what else they need to go into the ring and take these guys on. So I don't know what their thought process is. I mean, are they going to eventually do a 5-on-2 match? Are they going to do what we saw last week at the end of the Brody Lee episode and do that 5-on-5 match? I don't know where it leads now that they had Cody and the other people involved last week do something else tonight, and then they went back to this 5-on-2 feud, which I don't know where they're going with it. I mean, I know they have Darby Allin and Brian Cage next week going against each other, but it seems like they have something in the plans more. I hope they don't have Darby Allin clean Brian Cage clean next week, because I wouldn't be happy about that, but I'm sure next Thursday, I'll be talking about how Allin pinned Cage clean, or with help from Sting or something like that. But what did you think of this pointless weigh-in between these two?
I would go 110% agreement as far as a pointless weigh-in goes. They've done the same scenario with Sting now a few weeks in a row. I would imagine, if I was a betting man, that at the pay-per-view they have in, I think February is the next AEW pay-per-view offering, you'll see Sting and his partner in crime, Darby Allin, there take on two members of Team Taz, probably Cage and Ricky Starks. The one thing that I took from that segment that I liked was Ricky Starks kind of reminded me of an early 1998 Rock in this one, when he was first put with the Nation of Domination, and he didn't do all the talking. Ron Simmons was the leader of the pack, but he'd do little things during the promo to try and get the focus and attention on himself without even speaking in these group promos. And I thought that, from a psychological point of view, is a great thing for him. He's still finding a way to keep a little bit of shine on himself, even if he isn't the guy doing the speaking or the one being focused on for the match in question. So I tip my cap to Ricky Starks. I continue to see a lot of potential in him. If I was AEW, he's someone that I would sign to a long-term contract to make one of their main players. I've never met him in person. I'm not quite sure of his size, but considering what the business in general is right now in 2021, I mean, he doesn't stand out as small, so he's someone that I would attempt to go with.
The next matchup of the night, Cody Rhodes defeated Matt Seidel. Snoop Dogg came out with Cody, and he was announced as Cody's coach, which I thought was dumb. After the match, Cody was attacked by Serpentico and Luther, but Matt Seidel saved him. Snoop Dogg then hit a frog splash on Serpentico from the top rope and pinned him, but it wasn't official. But Cody did the 3 count. I don't know why they needed to do that. I know why they had Snoop Dogg there to promote the Go Big Show, but I don't know why they needed to have Snoop Dogg do a frog splash and then fake pin Serpentico. I think it made Serpentico look, I mean, even though there's nothing about Serpentico that I necessarily like or want to see, and he's not a big superstar. But I mean, getting pinned by Snoop Dogg by anybody is just dumb. And back to the thing that I said about him being announced as his coach, Arn Anderson wasn't out there with Cody per usual. So Snoop Dogg took over the role of holding that sheet they have, that game plans for matches, which I like. I think it's different than what we usually see. But I thought Snoop Dogg holding it and reading off of it just made a joke out of it, of something that's actually different and good in professional wrestling. And that's what AEW tends to do. They do something good, and then they kind of just ruin it. And wasn't really a big fan of after it. I thought the match was good. A couple sloppy parts of it, but for two guys that don't really wrestle each other a lot or haven't wrestled each other in a while, you're going to see some things like that, especially when Seidel doesn't usually wrestle every single week. So you're going to have a little miscues between the two. But I mean,
No,
I just think
that shouldn't be something you expect when you're talking about two pros. But
no. I'm not saying I expected it. I'm just saying there's reasons to why. You know, it's not, if they were wrestling every week and they messed up, that's a little alarming. But these guys don't wrestle each other a lot or involved with each other a lot. So at least you have a little bit of an excuse to why there were some miscues. But I just think the whole thing with Snoop Dogg, that might have been the lowest part of the show, and a show that was not that good to me, other than the main event. But what did you think of Rhodes and Seidel?
I didn't think it was a bad match. Like you noted, I thought Seidel looked a little off. The heels doing the running after the match, though, again, is one of those mind-blowing moments. Talk about two guys with offense that was just so pathetic, it didn't even look like it belonged on an independent wrestling show. The bald one, I think his name is Luther, the one that was throwing the kicks. I couldn't believe that was on a nationally televised production in 2021. You had some stiff to take the bump for Snoop Dogg off the top rope. Funny. Watch Go Big Show tonight on TNT at 9 o'clock or whatever time it's on. The only thing I didn't like about it was that the splash wasn't all that good, and they replayed it about 8 times to show that it really didn't connect. But, why let making it look real get in the way?
Yeah, and then people were talking about, WWE's going to be mad at him. Why would WWE care what he's doing? When was the last time he showed up on WWE TV? Was 2016 when he came out with Sasha Banks? I mean, he's in their Hall of Fame, but what has he really done to warrant heat with WWE?
Well, his voice is on that show every week.
I think to the average wrestling fan, if you ask them who that is, they wouldn't really know. But I don't know. That was the down point of the show for me. And then they continued with the downfall of the show. With the next match, Hikaru Shida defeated Abaddon to retain her AEW Women's Championship, a match I necessarily didn't really care for. I mean, you'd think biting someone would be a disqualification in a match, and she bit her a few times in the match, and there was still no disqualification. And as you mentioned on the show before, if she didn't have any wrap or any protection where she bit her before, that was going to be stupid, and she had no protection on where she bit her the past couple weeks. There wasn't even marks, like they didn't even do any.
She had a scarf wrapped around her neck. No,
that was, I don't know if that was her ring gear or what, but her ring gear looked just natural. But she didn't have any like tape or any bandages over it. It just looked just regular ring gear.
That's a very deep bite, then, I guess.
Yeah, and then the match itself, I'm glad they kept it somewhat short, and it was over, and I really don't care to see this anymore, in my opinion. But what did you think of the matchup between these two women?
I think Abaddon, is it Abaddon or Abaddon?
Abaddon.
That one. I think she's got kind of a unique look. I like that she bites. No one bites anymore in wrestling. But if they're going to do it, again, you should sell the bite marks and the excessive amounts of blood that have come from Shida the past couple of weeks. When she pulled her under the ring, I didn't understand why the referee, instead of trying to go under with them, wasn't counting them out.
Shouldn't have a threesome under the ring.
Well, maybe that was it. But those are the types of things that go right through me during a wrestling show. He should have been counting them out, not under the ring with them, like they were, like it was a tug of war with Shida and Abaddon. But the match itself was It felt like they tried maybe a little bit too hard. I like that they're trying to come up with a more edgy, violent character. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but it didn't feel like anything I'd want to see again.
No, I mean, and this show wasn't good as it was, and I just think this added to just the eye rolling of the show, or the changing of the channel of the show, which we can't do, obviously, because then we wouldn't have a full script for our shows. As we move into the main event here, Kenny Omega defeated Rey Fenix in the main event to retain his AEW championship. A good match to close the show. After the match, Omega was attacked by Jon Moxley, but Kenny was saved by the Good Brothers, the Impact Tag Team Champions, Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows. The Young Bucks then came out to break it up, but then joined in. And the group aligned again in the middle of the ring, and they all put up the 2 Sweet to close the show. Good to see Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows on AEW. What did you think of the main event and the segment that followed?
No, I thought it was a really good main event. I could have done without the Eddie Kingston faction being involved in the post-match angle, but I guess you needed a reason to eliminate Pac and his tag team partner from the equation for the Good Brothers doing the run-in. I really like that part a lot. I like that they destroyed all of the undercard and enhancement guys at ringside. But then, again, you have to go the AEW route, where it goes a little bit too far instead of trying to lengthen the program out a little bit. You had to have the Young Bucks run out. You had to have the Young Bucks save Gallows and Anderson instead of it being a mystery as if they were going to be friendly in this company or not. They had to do the super kicks right away and then end with that 2 Sweet. That's kind of interesting, where the Young Bucks faced legal action from WWE at one point over doing that hand gesture and trying to sell merchandise with it. But even though I thought it was a bit overdone, maybe they went a little too far, much like Monday Night Raw, I thought it was a great ending and that they did get people talking, and they want to see what's going to happen on next week's episode. And it looked like a rather tame lineup for the matches they announced next week, so maybe they needed a hot angle like this to try and hold the interest, which I imagine was a pretty solid rating last night.
Well, I don't have the viewership last night,
Well,
but
we're
I'm
gonna
sure.
guess then, I guess.
But I think the news is gonna take a lot away from the viewership from last night, from what happened in Washington D.C. Yesterday. But we will find out as we get into our grades now for AEW. As I said, most of the show was kind of just The opening match was all right. Moxley promo was good. They had a big man match that was good for the most part, and then from there, it kind of just went downhill a little bit with the weigh-in segment, and then Rhodes and Seidel was good until the aftermatch stuff, then the women's match, but then the main event picked it back up. This is one where I was in the middle between the two numbers, but I went down to a 4. I was between a 4 and a 5. It was between a 4 and a 5. So if we did halves, I'd do 4.5. But for you not wanting the halves, I did a 4. Just because the end of the show was a little overdone, in my opinion. I think if they didn't overdo the ending of the show, it would have probably been bumped up to a 5. But I just, for a show where I only really liked about maybe a half hour of it, 45 minutes, I can't really give it above a 5 when I don't like more than half of it. But I thought the show was good, but not really good enough to like more than half of it. So what did you think of the show?
I went much higher than you. I also, much like NXT, gave this one a 7. I thought it hit on its big points. There were a few things I didn't like, which made me obviously deduct from it being the maximum of a 10, but I thought it was much more hit than miss, and it left you with, it's almost a rarity nowadays in wrestling, wanting to see what's going to happen next week instead of just being happy that the show was over. So I thought they did a good job with the key points of the show. There were, like I said, a little much with the blood and the biting with the women and the 9 replays of Snoop Dogg's leap. And, you know, how many times are you going to have an entire faction run from Sting and a middle school-looking child? But Yeah, for the most part, it was more spot on than it was spot off, and I look forward to see where it goes next week. I think it has more buzz coming out of it next week than NXT does, and I thought they were both very good shows this week.
Well, we'll find out what happens with AEW next week. Next week is going to be night 2 of New Year's Smash. So they like to do these little 2-week events that they like doing a kind of a pay-per-view card. They like doing a bunch of title matches, a lot of big feud matches, blow-off matches and stuff like that, big angles. So we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe they do Team Taz versus The Elite, a little 5-on-5 action, but we'll see what happens now that we have this big faction to close the show, which I am interested in. Not really interested in much else in AEW right now, but I'm waiting to see what happens next week with Gallows and Anderson entering the fray for All Elite Wrestling.
Yeah, again, the fans are talking. They want to know what's going to happen next, so to me, that's usually the sign of a pretty good show. I just felt that a lot of it was rushed. I would have stretched it out a little bit, maybe to tease what was going to happen between Young Bucks and Gallows and Anderson next week, but that's not the route they chose to go.
Just got to tease them a little bit.
You got to do a little teasing. You got to give them a little foreplay before the orgasm, baby. You know that with the socks.
It's like you with the Patreon.
Oh, there you go. But the Patreon always delivers, baby.
Yeah, well, and then I just, as you said, going back to that, which I didn't bring up, was how they had them debut. I wish they kind of saved it a little bit rather than doing everything at once. You know, you could have saved the Young Bucks aligning with them for maybe next week or the week after. You know what I mean?
Yeah, easily.
I just feel like you could have, you know, rubbed the dough out a little bit wider rather than just doing it all in one night. You know, have them tease a thing with Omega, not fully align with him, but tease it a little bit. You know, are they going to join Omega? And then have the Young Bucks kind of face off with them a little bit, but then tease them joining Omega and the Good Brothers. So kind of, you can drag it out a little bit. But I don't know how many times, even just in an episode, we talk about AEW rushing everything into one single night. And that's where I kind of just fell off of it, where sometimes I look at it maybe too in-depth sometimes, but that's how I grade it. But we'll see what happens next week with, I don't know, I don't think they're going to be called the Bullet Club because they don't have that right. I don't think
they wouldn't be called that. I think probably the Good Brothers.
No, I'm talking about the group as a whole. Bucks.
That's what
Good
I mean.
Brothers.
I think that's probably what they'll call them.
Maybe just the Elite. We'll find out. But I'm excited for next Wednesday in Daly's place. I think next week will be better than tonight or last night.
Well, we shall see. I don't know. The lineup for next week wasn't exactly an inspiring one, but you know that's why they have the matches, I guess, right?
Well, at least they announce every single match the week before. I mean, you don't really have
some.
Yeah, and then some. They almost announced the only thing left that they have to do is announce the commercials. But other than that,
They're
they got
already
the
halfway through March with all their announcements.
Yeah.
So are there any other news and notes that you have? Because I don't want to be accused of anything.
Nope, I'm not going to accuse you of anything tonight.
All right, well, what about the party with Marty beginning at 10 p.m.?
Well, the plugs are your expertise.
Let me tell you something, baby. We're going to be talking a little Bullet Bob Armstrong, Tracy Smothers, Marty's breaking into wrestling, Marty's advice for those that want to break into wrestling, Marty's jobs outside of wrestling, Marty Jannetty in high school. It's a pretty interesting episode. It's over an hour and a half long, which I believe makes it the longest episode with Marty yet. So I enjoyed it an awful lot. I hope the fans at home do. I know that last night the episode with Tatanka was very well received, and what was I guess his official premiere that didn't have anything to do with the toy drive. I enjoyed the Tatanka episode immensely. It's available in the archives, and for those fans that Tuesday night may have missed the 2021 kickoff of Wrestling Insiders at Your House with the Hall of Famer, Mr. USA Tony Atlas, Tony shares life advice about a variety of topics, including unwanted holiday guests, homeschooling kids in 2021, ED, a variety of things were discussed with Tony Atlas's Life Advice. If you missed that episode, fans, I highly encourage you to check it out. It certainly is light when it comes to wrestling context, but when it comes to the world around us, Tony has some very interesting thoughts. And then, of course, we'll be back tomorrow night after SmackDown at 10 p.m. with the fabulous one himself, John Cena Sr., I believe. He's in northern Alaska right now, checking out the northern lights with Margot Ouellette. So we're hoping to have Johnny back in the studio within the next week or two. He's done everything he could to try and go to places where there is no coronavirus. I know he was in New Zealand for quite a while with Margot.
I've been wanting to move to New Zealand.
He said he went down under.
Well, I think she did too, but...
So there's a lot to look forward to, fans. We have the brand new talk shows every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday night at 10 p.m. We got the classic clips from some of the all-time greats during the week over on the YouTube channel. We have these great TV reviews Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night at 9. We got the live watch-alongs. We have the occasional Cyber Autograph signing live episodes. We got a lot going on in 2021, but there's one thing we need to make it keep on going. Other than Matt Sox, that's your support, folks. Give us a big thumbs up. That goes a long way. The Super Chat is open. Click that button at any denomination you want. Don't forget to tip the bartender. Why? Because it helps us keep the lights on, even if we don't need lights on. In a podcast type format, we could kind of do that in the dark. But for the talk shows, we need the lights on. The Patreon, of course, cheaper than a cup of coffee at Starbucks. It helps bring the superstars in. The eBay store is open 24/7 with great rare wrestling merchandise to add to your man cave. Give as a gift to someone, a very, very, very early Christmas gift, if you will. And yeah, so we got a lot going on here and lots of ways fans can help. I posted a Patreon exclusive today where I have some scoops, some news and notes for the great Patreon fans. So head on over to patreon.com/Boston Wrestling, and here's some content you can't get anywhere else. How about that? My midget-sized podcast table. I think I'd have more space if we took Howard Miller to the barber and I cut his hair and I put the recorder, the microphone, the paper, the pen, the phone, and my water bottle on his hair. But that's what I'm working with right now. You know, it wouldn't be a very big Thanksgiving feast.
Now you could do a podcast with Hornswoggle.
Instead of a turkey, we might be looking at like a 4-piece from Popeyes. You know what I mean? You know, there's not a lot of space. I'm going to have to take a picture of this compared to the other one where you could almost have an orgy on it. It was so big. But
well,
it's a new year. It's a new table. What are you going to do?
I don't know about the orgy part, but we could do the podcast on them.
As long as we get the podcast done, that is all that counts. All right, man. Anything else before we go and get ready to party with Marty at the top of the hour, baby?
Well, I'm ready to party for almost about 2 hours tonight with Marty, which I think is usually short for him.
What color are the socks right now?
They're the usual black and white ones that I wear to the gym.
All right. Now, what about the pants? Since the fans have asked about the pants during the live premiere, are these the salmon pants that you tried to proclaim were Christmas-colored pants?
The ones I have on now are my gym ones, which are also black and white. I like to match my outfit. Well, my shirt is actually black and white, too, which is actually my Boost Oxygen one.
Well, we're waiting for Kevin O'Leary to help the cause with that. But Mr. Wonderful, hopefully you're listening to these great podcasts to just entice you to join us all the more. We're working on a lot of great stuff here at the zip code of Champion 02176, downtown Melrose, Massachusetts. For my partner in crime, Mr. Degnan, we'll see you at the top of the hour with Marty Jannetty. We'll see you after SmackDown tomorrow night with John Cena Sr., and then we'll be back talking a little SmackDown itself Saturday night at 9. Until we speak again, folks, you and yours, stay healthy, be well. Good night.